I'm an anxious woman, all right? I'll admit this part plainly. Here we go. I'm an anxious woman, and in that capacity, I have been the recipient of much advice and considerable judgment. I have been both counseled and criticized, dissected in parlors when I'm not present to defend myself. On the other hand, I've recounted my dreadful symptoms to anyone who would listen, hoping desperately for some comfort, but with little success, I'm afraid. I've often been a burden, for a burden, I am told, is a person who will speak of her own troubles when you wish to speak of yours. My husband insists that there is nothing wrong with me, that my afflictions are entirely fabricated and illogical. He grows quite irritable when I mention my wretched condition and treats my poor health as a personal affront to him. He says, when particularly annoyed, that he is tired of my complaints, that I appear healthy, eat adequately, sleep soundly, and therefore must be as robust as any woman can be. If I suffer from a migraine and must cancel our plans, he becomes more agitated than if the migraine were his own, which strikes me as unreasonable. He is frequently quite cutting about my symptoms, and this only compounds my misery. Once or twice he has shown kindness, and I felt immediately improved, but he maintains that sympathy will harm me and encourage me to surrender to my weakness. I suppose he understands these matters because he is always so confident. He says all I need to do is brighten my spirits, to rouse myself, to gather my strength. He strikes his chest, and in a voice that makes my skull throb he declares, "Look at me. I am not anxious." Why should you be? I don't know why I'm anxious, and so I never attempt to answer this question. From the manner in which my husband speaks, I feel certain he must consider me a fraud. If we host a small gathering for dinner, he is sure to make some remark about the lamentable weakness of certain women's constitutions. I know he is speaking directly to me, and so do the guests, but I can only smile weakly and feel humiliated. I have no desire to be anxious. It is wretched enough, heaven knows. I would give anything to be free of all my terrors and be entirely well again. If I wished to adopt an affliction, I should select one less hideously tormenting than anxiety. I have often thought I would rather be deaf than anxious, and then my husband would truly pity me, but I should be terribly isolated, cut off from all voices and music forever. I receive considerable comfort from several of my lady friends. They're at least understanding. They believe me, except that my complaints are genuine and that what I describe is real. Unfortunately, when I have detailed certain of my symptoms, such as one of my breathless spells, they immediately declare that they have experienced identical episodes, only more severe. They express such concern for me, but then they proceed to describe in exhaustive detail the precise circumstances of their own last attacks. I am eager to tell them of my other peculiar symptoms, but they say that it does them such tremendous good to unburden themselves to someone, and I, being rather timid, allow them to continue, only wishing they would listen to me as I listen to them. I observe that their husbands maintain, for the most part, the same mistaken views about anxiety that mine does. They say they would like to make their men suffer as they themselves do. One lady I know always concludes with the reflection, "Ah well, I shall not be here long, and when I am gone and buried, he will be sorry he was not more understanding. He will know then, when it is too late, that my symptoms were real enough." I must say that I have never gone to the extreme of wishing to die merely to prove my husband's obstinate foolishness. I should like to fall into a death-like trance and frighten him terribly, but then I should be able to hear what he said when he thought I was gone, and remind him of it afterwards whenever he became cynical. It is in the morning that I feel most wretched. I am truly ghastly then. I wake with the terrible premonition that something dreadful is going to occur. I don't know what it might be, yet I feel I could sink through the mattress. I imagine the waking moments of the condemned prisoner, who is said to have slept peacefully the night before his execution. He wakes slowly, gradually, at first hazily comfortable and calm, will yawn and stretch until there creeps in the horrible recollection, the judge, the verdict, the scaffold, the rope around the neck. I know the cold perspiration that breaks over the entire body and the sickening clutching about the heart that accompanies such an awakening, but I doubt if any emerging from sleep can be truly worse than many I have experienced. I can accomplish so little during the day. I soon become exhausted and so utterly depleted that I can only lie motionless in a darkened room. When I am in such a state, the slightest sound troubles me and even tortures me nearly out of my senses. If someone begins playing the piano, or if a servant persistently walks about with squeaking shoes, or if my husband comes in and attempts to be cheerful, I feel absolutely frantic. It is unbearable. It is on such occasions as these that my husband is inclined to urge me to gather myself together. He quite maddens me when he says this. I feel as full of terror and distress as a drowning person. How silly it would be to lean over a pier and tell a drowning person in comfortable tones that they should gather themselves together. Yet that is what my husband says to me. Practical. I cannot walk out alone. If I attempt it, I am soon panic-stricken. I become hot all over, very faint, and so dizzy that I reel. I have to cling to the railings of houses. I am seized with the hideous sensation that I can neither proceed nor return. I am not disturbed by the mere possibility of collapsing on the pavement, but by a paralyzing nightmare that I cannot take another step. If anyone were to place me in the center of a great square, like the Piazza San Marco in Venice, and leave me there alone, I think I should die or lose my reason. I know I should be unable to escape. I should fall down, keep my eyes shut tight, and try to crawl to the edge on my hands and knees, filled all the while with haunting terror. A man who finds himself compelled to cross a narrow icy ridge which drops into an abyss on either side could not feel worse than I do when confronted with open space, nor pray more fervently to be clear of the dreadful expanse and safe. That this is all nonsense, I suppose it is, but it is such nonsense as would be sense if the consequence were death. The knowledge that I must attend a dinner party fills me with unspeakable dread. By the time I am dressed and ready to depart, I am chilled, trembling all over and gasping for air. The carriage ride to the house is almost as full of horror as the ride of a condemned criminal to the gallows. By the time I arrive, I am so ill I can scarcely speak. I am convinced that I shall collapse, or be sick, or shall have to cry out. More than once I have insisted upon being driven home again, and my husband has gone to the dinner alone, after much expression of displeasure. Possibly my most torturous experiences have been at the theater, to which I have been taken on the grounds that my mind required diversion, and that a cheerful play would take me out of myself. My worst terrors have descended upon me when I have been seated in the center of the stalls, with people crowded all around me. I have felt as if I was imprisoned and have been filled by one intense, overwhelming desire, the compulsion to escape. I have passed through all the horrors of suffocation, have felt that I must stand, must lift my arms and gasp. I have looked at the exit only to feel that escape was as impossible as it would be for a miner about whom the walls of a shaft had collapsed. It is useless for my husband to nudge me and tell me not to make a spectacle of myself. If I wish to make a spectacle of myself, I should select some more agreeable method of doing it. It is useless, moreover, to reason with me. No reasoning can dispel the ever-present panic, the feeling of being buried alive, or the hopeless sensation of inability to escape. I have sat out entire plays undergoing torments beyond expression, until I have become quite limp and until my lip has been nearly bitten through in the effort not to scream. No one would believe that a healthy-looking woman in a fashionable dress, smiling at acquaintances, could be enduring as much agony as if she were trapped in an iron chamber the walls of which were gradually closing in around her. I'm very fond of my clothes when I am well, but there are certain gowns I have come to detest because they recall occasions when I have nearly gasped out of my life while wearing them. I have taken much medicine, but with no apparent benefit. I envy the woman who believes in her nerve tonic, since such faith must be a great comfort to her. I knew a poor girl who became for a time quite unhinged owing to her engagement having been broken. She refused food and lived for a week, so she told me on her mother's nerve tonic. She declared that it saved her sanity. I tried it, but it only gave me a rash. I have consulted a good many doctors, but although they are all very kind, they seem to be dense, and they have but the one approach to treating the nervous woman as they would treat a frightened child or a lost puppy. I was taken to one doctor because he had the reputation of being very sensible and forthright. My husband said there was no nonsense about him. He certainly made no effort to be charming. After he had examined me, he said that all my organs were perfectly sound. He then began to address me as my dear lady, and at once I knew what was coming. He was going to tell me that I needed rousing, and that all I had to do was not to think about myself at all, which is very good advice to give to a person who feels on the point of dissolution. He told my husband afterwards in strict confidence that if I were a poor woman who had to work for her living, I should be well immediately. He went further and said that what would cure me would be a week working at a laundry. I suppose my husband shared these confidences with me as we drove home from the doctor's and remarked what a shrewd, common-sense man he was. My husband quite admired him. Another doctor I consulted was very sympathetic. He patted my hand and was so kind that he almost made me weep. He said he understood how real and intense my sufferings were. He knew I must have gone through torments. He gave me a great many particulars as to how I was to live and said I was never to do anything I did not wish to do. I wanted to visit him again, but he insisted that I must go abroad at once to break with my troubling associations and afford my shattered nerves a complete rest. He gave me a letter to a colleague abroad, which he said contained a very full and particular account of my case. Something occurred to prevent me from leaving England, but 6 months later I came across the letter, and feeling it was no longer of use, I opened it. It began, "Dear Humphrey," and contained a great deal about their respective scores at billiards and their plans for the autumn. The doctor concluded with a postscript, "The lady who brings this is Mrs. She's a dreadful woman, utterly neurotic. I need say no more about her, but I hope you won't mind my burdening you with her, for she is the sort of tedious person who bores me to death. However, she pays her fees." My husband sent the letter back to the doctor who wrote it because he thought the memoranda about the billiard scores would be interesting for him to keep. As I made no progress, and as my friends were growing as weary of me as I was of myself, it was decided that I should be taken seriously in hand. I was therefore sent to a nursing home to undergo the rest cure. I had to lie in bed, be force-fed, and be massaged daily. I was isolated from all communication with the familiar world and was allowed to receive neither letters nor newspapers. The idea underlying this treatment is, I think, somewhat absurd. It is in the main an attempt to cure a patient by enforced tedium. The inducement offered is crudely this: you can go home as soon as you think fit to be well. I did not mind the quiet, nor the lying in bed. The excessive feeding merely made me uncomfortable. The massage was a form of torture that I dreaded with great loathing. The absence of news from home kept me in a state of unrest and apprehension. It was the continued speculation as to what was happening in my household which prevented me from sleeping at night. The withdrawal of all newspapers was evidently a punishment devised by a man. It was no punishment to me, nor would it be to the average woman. The nurse, of course, kept me informed of current events, as she was extremely fond of talking, and thereby rendered a newspaper unnecessary. She told me of the occasions when my husband called to inquire, and always said that he looked very well and remarkably cheerful. She walked past my house once and came back with the information that the drawing-room curtains were open and that the sun was streaming into the room. This worried me a great deal, as I don't like faded carpets and fabrics, and I'm very fond of my furniture. After I had been in the home a few days, I discovered that the institution was not wholly devoted to rest cure cases, but that it was also a surgical home where many operations were performed. This frightened me terribly, because I began to wonder whether an operation had been part of the plan when I was taken seriously in hand. I arrived at the conclusion that I was being prepared for an operation, that I was being fattened up, with the result that I was prostrated by alarm. I felt that at any moment a man with a black bag might enter the room and proceed to chloroform me. There came upon me the conviction that I was being imprisoned, that I had been deceived and trapped. Above all was the awful feeling which nearly suffocated me, that I was powerless to escape. I thought my husband had been most base to desert me like this and hand me over, as it were, to unknown torturers. I have a dread of operations which is beyond expression. The mere thought of the process of being chloroformed makes me sick and faint. You are held down on a table, I believe, and then deliberately suffocated. It must be as if someone knelt upon your chest and strangled you by gripping your throat with their hands. When I was a small girl, I saw our cook dispose of a live mouse by sinking the mousetrap in which it was imprisoned into a bucket of water. I remember that the struggles of the mouse as seen underwater were horrible to witness. Well, when I grew older and was told about people being chloroformed for operations, I always imagined that their sensations would be as hideous as those of the drowning mouse in the trap. I told my suspicions and alarms to the nurse, who laughed at me contemptuously. She said, "You're merely a rest case. No surgeon ever thinks of operating on a nerve case. The greater number of the patients here come for very serious operations. They are real patients." As she conversed further, I must confess that my pride began to be touched. I had supposed that my case was the most important and most interesting in the establishment. I had the largest room in the house, while the fussing over me had been considerable. I now began to learn that there were others who were in far worse plight than myself. I, on the other hand, had merely to lie in bed and sleep. They, on the other hand, came to the home with their lives in their hands to confront an appalling ordeal. I was haunted by indefinite alarms. They had to submit to the tangible steel of the surgeon's knife. I began to be a little ashamed of myself and of the trouble I had occasioned. Compared with me, these women were heroines. There was something to make a fuss about, for they had to walk alone through the valley of the shadow of death. I had many times said that I wished I were dead, but a little reflection on the modes of dying made me keep that wish ever after unexpressed. My nurse deplored that she was not a surgical nurse. To nurse an operation case is real nursing, she said. There is something satisfying in work like that. I am only a mental nurse, you see. A confession which humbled me still further. It was in September that I entered the home, and as the leading surgeons were still away from London, there were no operations. When October arrived, the grim work was resumed. The house was set vibrating with anticipation, in which I shared, as soon as I discovered that the operating theater was directly above my bedroom. Almost the first operation happened to be a particularly momentous one, concerned with which was none other than the great surgeon of the day. His coming was anticipated with a buzz of interest by the nurses, an interest which was even shared by the mental nurse in whose charge I was. I could learn very little about this great case, save that it was desperate and the patient a woman. I knew that she entered the home the night before, for my nurse planned to meet her on her way to her room. I knew also that just before the hour of closing the house, I heard weeping on the staircase as two people slowly made their way down. I came to know afterwards that one was the husband, the other the daughter. The operation was to be at 9 in the morning. By 6 a.m., the whole house was astir. There was much running up and down the stairs. Everyone was occupied. My morning toilet and breakfast were hurried through with little ceremony. The nurse was excited, absent-minded, and disinclined to answer questions. After my breakfast was cleared away, she vanished. It was supposed that I was never to be left alone, and she did not appear again until noon. When she did come back, she found me an altered woman. I lay in bed in a solitary room with my eyes fixed upon the white ceiling over my head. I was terrified beyond all reason. There was everywhere the sense of an overstrung activity, hushed and ominous, which was leading to tragedy. I knew that in the room above me was about to be enacted a drama in which one of the actors was death. There was considerable bustle in the room in question. They were moving something very heavy into the middle of the floor. It was, I am certain, the operating table. Other tables were dragged about and adjusted with precision. Above the ceaseless pattern of feet, I could hear the pouring of water into basins. I knew when the surgeon and his assistants arrived, for I heard his voice on the stair, unconcerned, the one strong and confident thing among all these portentous preparations. Heavy bags were carried up from the hall to be deposited on the floor above. I could hear the surgeon's firm footstep overhead and noticed further moving of tables. Then came now a clatter of steel and metal instruments which made me shiver. I looked at the clock on my table. It was 3 minutes to 9. I thought of the poor soul who was waiting. She also would be looking at the clock. 3 minutes more, and she would be led in her nightdress into this chamber of horrors. The very idea paralyzed me. If I were in her place, I should scream until I roused the street. I should struggle with every fiber of my body. I should cling to the door until my arms were pulled out of their sockets. An organ grinder in the street was playing a trivial waltz. A boy was going by whistling. The world was cheerfully indifferent. The loneliness of the stricken woman was horrible beyond words. As the church clock struck 9, I knew that the patient was entering the room. I fancied I could hear the shuffle of her slippers and the closing of the door, the last hope of escape behind her. A chair was moved into position. She was stepping up onto the table. Then came an absolute silence. I knew they were chloroforming her. I fancied the vapor of that sickly drug was oozing through the ceiling into my room. I was suffocating. I gasped until I thought my chest would burst. The silence was awful. I dared not scream. I would have rung my bell, but the thought of the noise it would make held me back. I lay glaring at the ceiling, my forehead covered with drops of cold sweat. I wrung my fingers together lest all sensation should go out of them. There came a faint moan from the room above, and then once more the moving of feet was to be heard. I felt that the operation had begun. I could picture the knife, the gray cut, the cold callousness of it all. For what seemed to me to be interminable hours, I gazed at the ceiling. How long was this torture to go on? How could the poor moaning soul be tormented all this while? Suddenly, there was a great commotion in the room above. The table was dragged round rapidly. There were footsteps everywhere. Was the operation over? No. Something had gone wrong. A man dashed downstairs calling for a cab. In a moment, the wheels rattled along the street and then returned. He had gone to fetch something and rushed upstairs with it. This made me wonder for a moment about the husband and daughter who were waiting in a room off the hall. Would they die of the suspense? Why did they not burst into the room and drag her away while there was yet time? The lower part of the house was practically empty, and I was conscious that 2 or 3 times the trembling couple had crept up the stairs to the level of my room to listen. I could hear the daughter say, "What shall we do? What shall we do?" Then they would stumble again to the empty room. I still glared at the ceiling, frozen in dread. I had forgotten about myself, although there was such a sinking in my heart that I could only breathe in gasps. The bustle in the room above continued. Now, as I gazed upwards, I noticed to my inexpressible horror a small round patch of red appearing on the white ceiling. I knew it was blood. The spot was at first as large as a shilling piece. It grew until it became the size of a saucer. It seemed to my vision as if it had been a red-hot disc. It became a deeper crimson until at last one awful drop fell upon the white coverlet of my bed. It came down with the weight of lead. The impact went through me like an electric shock. Drenched with perspiration, I was as wet and as cold as if I had been dragged out of a winter's river. Another drop fell like a stone. I would have hidden my head under the bedclothes, but I dared not stir. As each drop fell on the bed, the intervals came quicker, until there was a scarlet patch on the white quilt that grew and grew. I knew that the evil stain would come through the coverings, hot and wet, to my clenched hands which lay just beneath. I was unable to move them higher. My sight was now almost gone. There was nothing but a red haze filling the room, a roaring in my ears, and the drops. I must have been unconscious. I can scarcely remember the nurse entering the room. When I realized once more where I was, I found that the bedclothes had been changed. There was still the round red mark on the ceiling, but it was now dry. As soon as I could speak, I asked, "Is she dead?" The nurse answered, "No. She will live, yes. I hope she will. It has been a fearful business." The operation lasted 2.5 hours, and when a great blood vessel gave way, they thought it was all over. "She was frightened?" I asked. "No," said the nurse. She walked into the room, erect and smiling, and said in a steady voice, "I hope I have not kept you waiting, gentlemen. I know you cannot begin without me." In a week I returned home, cured. My nerves were gone. It was absurd to say that I could not walk in the street when that brave woman had walked, smiling, into that place of gas and steel. When I thought of the trouble I had made about going to the theater, I recalled what had passed in that upper room. I began to think less of my case when I thought of hers. The doctor was extremely pleased with my recovery, while his belief in the efficacy of the rest cure became unbounded. I did not trouble to tell him that I owed my recovery not to his tiresome diet and ridiculous massage, but to that red patch on the ceiling. The lady of the upper room recovered. Through the instrumentality of the nurse, I was able to catch sight of her when she was taking her first walk outdoors after the operation. I expected to see a goddess. I saw only a plain little woman with gentle eyes and a very pale face. I knew that those eyes had peered into eternity. Some years have now passed by, but still, whenever I falter, The recollection of that face makes me strong.